Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Predaplant Yugioh deck profile for post-Immortal Destiny. This is the second deck from the Immortal Destiny booster set that I'll be doing a deck profile on. It's a really awesome deck. The whole point of the Predaplant deck is to summon out a bunch of different dark monsters onto the field and then fusion summon using them to go for some scary Predaplant monsters or Starving Venom Fusion Dragon and his entire lineup. You have a lot of different options with this deck and very, very powerful when it goes up against your opponent. Also putting the Predator counters on your opponent's monsters to get a bunch of different effects as well. I really like the results and all the new support we received for the deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So to start off for the monsters, I run 3 Predaplant Orpheus Scorpio. With this one, if this card is normal or special summon, you can send 1 monster from your hand to the graveyard to special summon 1 Predaplant monster from your deck, except for Orpheus Scorpio. You can only use this effect of Orpheus Scorpio once per turn. But you have so much setup with this card and just getting the requirements for the main fusions in the deck, one of them being your Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, which needs 2 dark monsters on the field except tokens to make this card. So you can have the Polymerization in your hand, but you still need to get the monsters out onto the field. And with this card, you can definitely have that set up very, very easily, just being able to send another monster from your hand to the graveyard, which I do also like to run the Edge Imp lineup just to set them up in the graveyard. For those plays, you can easily summon them back out to the field and just have a lot of consistency with all the different monsters you can summon out to get your materials you need for your fusion plays. So you definitely need 3 Orpheus Scorpio so you can keep that consistently and, obviously have it to use another turn later on. And I run the 1 Predaplant Darling Tanya Cobra. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Predaplant monster, you can add 1 Polymerization spell card or fusion spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Darling Tanya Cobra once per duel. It's why I only run the 1 of this card, because obviously you can summon it with Orpheus Scorpio, and then after you summon it with it, you can search out the fusion spell you need, grabbing whichever one for your play, which then obviously you could just have the Orpheus Scorpio and the monster in your hand, because then Darlington Tanya Cobra will be the second monster you need, and then it can search out the fusion spell you need for your fusion play. And I also run another very important Predaplant monster, which is Predaplant Saranciant. With this one, when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. After damage calculation, if this card battled an opponent's monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster. If this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in the field is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 Predap card from your deck to your hand, except for Predaplant Saranciant. You can only use this effect of Predaplant Saranciant once per turn. It's an easy special summon onto the field, being able to protect you against your opponent's cards. Having the search is also very, very useful, and also just giving you that option to grab any of the Predap cards and also destroying the opponent's monsters. So it's a small, weak monster, but also very, very powerful with just the plays you can do when you are unprotected with no monsters on the field. That's why I like to run 3 of this card for that option available to you. And then for some of the other Predaplant monsters, I run 2 Predaplant Clemansandu with this one. Monsters with Predator counters that you use as fusion materials are treated as dark, and during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 dark fusion monster from your extra deck using this card in the field, and monsters from your hand, field, and or monsters with a Predator counter your opponent controls as fusion material. You can only use this effect of Clemansandu once per turn, but you have the option to go after your opponent's cards, which is very, very useful as well, and then also just having the option to use them as basically a super polymerization play as well on the field with these cards. I like to run the 2. You have that option available to you. I just find the one Orpheus Scorpio and Saranciant definitely do set up more of the plays much easier for you to do, but still a great option just to run the 2 Clemansandu for those plays also. And I also run the 1 Predaplant Drosophilum Hydra. You can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard by attributing 1 monster on either side of the field with a Predator counter. You can only special summon Predaplant Drosophilum Hydra once per turn this way, and during either player's turn, if this card is on the field or in the graveyard, you can banish 1 other Predaplant monster from your graveyard, then target 1 face-up monster on the field. It loses 500 attack, and you can only use this effect of Drosophilum Hydra. They have so many weird all over the place names, definitely does get confusing once per turn, but you have more and more to go off of with this card for the fact that you contribute one of your opponent's cards, but then also have the option to make their monster lose attack by banishing one from your graveyard. So it's just an easy special summon, giving you another requirement on the field. I only run the one, though. You have the option for searching it, obviously, but also just to take care of your opponent's card. But it's a level 5 monster, so it's not like you can normal summon it out very easily. You have to rely on the special summon by having the predator counters already on the field. And then for a little added backup for the Predaplant monsters, I run 3 Lone Fire Blossoms. Is just an easy way to mill through the Lone Fire Blossoms in your deck, but also to summon out Predaplant or for Scorpio onto the field, because then this card is definitely very important for your setup. So with just this card, you have an easy way to gain access to it into your deck as well. And I also said earlier that I do like to run the Edge Imp lineup. So I run 3 Edge Imp Chain. When this card declares an attack, you can add 1 Edge Imp Chain from your deck to your hand. And if this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Frightfur card from your deck to your hand. You can only use 1 Edge Imp Chain effect per turn, only once that turns. You can either search for an additional Dark Monster, which if you have 2 Edge Imp Chains, that is still the requirement for Starving Venom Fusion Dragon on the field. And also just being able to search out the Frightfur card, which is the one we run in this deck, just for a little added search is Frightfur Patchwork, which we'll get to when we talk about the spell cards, for the fact that Patchwork can search out the other Edge Imp cards and also Polymerization from your deck to your hand. So I like the 3 chain, just in, like I said, an added dark support that definitely does come in handy. And I also run the 1 Edge Imp Sabers, just another good card to make use of, for the fact that you can place 1 card from your hand on the top of your deck to special summon this card in defense from your graveyard. It's, once again, one of the requirements needed for a lot of your monsters we run in the extra deck, including our new boss monster, Predaplant Yugioh. Needs 3 dark monsters on the field to summon it, not really limited with Predaplant, so as long as you have the different ways to summon out your dark monsters on the field, you'll be good. And to finish off the monsters in the main deck, I run 2 Caligo Claw Crow. If you control a dark monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Caligo Claw Crow once per turn this way. Just another easy summon if you have any of the other monsters aside from Lone Fire Blossom. But if you have Lone Fire Blossom, you have access to the other cards in the deck. Then you have an easy way to special summon this card from your hand to the field and then meet your requirements. Because sometimes I'll be 1 short for one of my fusion plays, but that card definitely does come in handy. And that's it for the monsters. When I move on to the spells, I run 2 of the new Predap Practice. Special summon 1 Predaplant monster from your hand, then add 1 Predap card from your deck to your hand, except Predap Practice. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters, and you can activate 1 Predap Practice per turn. I might bump this up to 3 if I were to run it at 3. I might take out 1 of the Edge Imp Chains, just dropping it down to 2 for a 3rd copy of this. Situational, though, with that, since it is a once per turn effect, but still very, very useful. Just for easy special summoning. If it was from the deck, I would definitely, run the 3 for sure, but it has to be from your hand also, so remember that. But still very good for the search of a Predap card from your deck also. And then speaking of the Predap cards, I run 1 Predaponics, just another easy way to special summon a level 4 or lower Predaplant monster from your hand or graveyard, but it has its effects negated. And once returned during your standby, pay 100 life or destroy this card. So easy way just to get resources back onto the field. Same with pruning, by targeting 1 Predaplant monster in your graveyard and special summoning it, and then you equip it with this card, and when this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. Just almost like a premature burial for the Predaplant monsters. And I also run 1 Predaplast. You reveal any number of Predap cards in your hand, then target that number of face-up monsters your opponent controls and place 1 Predator counter on each one. And if you do any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher, become level 1. And as long as they have a Predator counter, if a Predator monster would be destroyed by battle, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So protection, but also your main way to set up the Predator counters on the field, aside from some of your fusion plays, which we'll get to in just a bit. I like to run 1 of each of these. They're just searchable with Predap Practice and some of the other cards, including, or for Scorpio, so you have options for those. And I also run 2 Preda Prime Fusion. The quick play spell, if a Predaplant monster is on the field, fusion summon 1 Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either field as material, including 2 or more dark monsters you control. You can activate 1 Preda Prime Fusion per turn, but if your opponent has the 1 dark monster, you meet the requirement for your main fusion as well, which is why I like to have that option available to it. It's also a quick play spell, so you can do it during the battle phase also to go for multiple attacks with your different monsters also. And then for the added fusion cards, I run 1 Polymerization just for the option with this card. Very, very useful when you need it. But I also like the 1 Fusion Substitute as an option because these cards are searchable in the deck also, but you also just have the option to use them for the cards on the field, then have the draw power with Fusion Substitute also. And I also run 2 Instant Fusion. Now, the main reason I run Instant Fusion is because I run Thousand Eyes Restrict in the extra deck for the fact that it is a Dark Monster, meaning you can have an easy requirement on the field for one of your other fusion cards, just getting out Thousand Eyes Restrict using Instant Fusion, and then obviously just needing 1 more monster from your hand to meet the 2 dark requirement for a good amount of monsters in the deck. And also, Predaplant Yugioh needs 1 fusion monster and 1 dark monster to make it, so with the Thousand Eyes Restrict, you have your requirements right there for this card. And I also run 2 Super Polymerization. This card is really, really good in this deck. It's just a card that can use your opponent's resources as well as your own. They can't activate anything in response to it. It's a quick play spell along with the Preda Prime Fusion. So I like having both options available to us. It is insane for sure using these cards options. If you wanted to add a 3rd Super Polymerization, you can take out the last fusion card. I still like it just along with Preda Pruning. Refusion, another easy way to special summon a fusion monster from your graveyard back onto the field for sure. And then just equipping it with this card. And then I also run the 2 Frightful Patchwork. It searches Polymerization and any of your edge imp cards, so I like the search available for them. I only run the 2 though. I really feel like you didn't really need many more else for the fusion options, especially if you do drop the number of edge imp chains you run for a 3rd Preda Practice in the deck. And then just to quickly wrap up the spells, I run 1 Foolish Burial and 1 Monster Reborn, easy special summon, and then you can also set up cards like Edgem Saber in the graveyard faster as well with Foolish Burial. And then we have a lot of graveyard setup and special summoning from the deck, like cards with Lone Fire Blossom. So I just run the 3 Call by the Grave to stop your opponent's hand traps so you can continue on with your own plays. Because if they stop any of those plays, your main ones being the fusion plays in the deck, it'll really shut down any other play you wanted to do. So running 3 of this definitely does come in handy. And that's it for the main deck. When I move on to the extra deck, I only have the 1 Predaplant Yugioh in here. It needs 3 dark monsters on the field to make it. Gains attack equal to the total original attack of all other monsters on the field with a Predator counter. You can use each effect of the following of Predaplant Yugioh once per turn. When your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck while you control this fusion summon card, quick effect, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. If your opponent controls a monster with a Predator counter, you can special summon this card from your graveyard in defense. And you really only need the 1 since the fact that you can easily get it back onto the field to use, and then obviously use the other effects as well. So once you get this 1 card out, as long as your opponent doesn't banish it from the graveyard, you can keep special summoning it back onto the field. And I also run 2 Predaplant Yugioh, just another strong fusion to go for. Once per turn, quick effect, you target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, place 1 Predator counter on it, and if it is a level, if 2 or higher, it becomes level 1. As long as it has a Predator counter, negate the activate effects of your opponent's monsters that have a Predator counter on it. So, great way to shut down your opponent. Another easy fusion to make, just needing a fusion monster and 1 dark monster as well. That's why I like to run the 2. I also run the 1 Predaplant Chimera Rafflesia. It just needs 1 Predaplant monster and 1 dark monster. What's great about Chimera Rafflesia is they don't have to be on the field also, but just has another easy way to set up the counters on the field. And I also run the 2 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, just a great way to take care of level 5 or higher monsters that are special summoned on your opponent's field. I like to run the 2 for that setup. And I also run the 1 Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon, just so you have the boss monster needing 1 Predaplant monster and 1 dark monster whose original level is 8 or higher. You have plenty of options for those targets in the deck as well with this card, so I like to run the 1. Having more of a boss monster as well, having 3300 attack, so we can get over a good number of your opponent's cards. And I also run the 2 Thousand Eyes Restrict, just so I can have the instant fusion targets with the deck also. And I also run 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp. It just needs 2 monsters with the same attribute, but different types. You have Caligo, Clawcrow, and some of the other Predaplants. So very easy, along with the Edgems, to get this card out, if need be, for its own effect. And then for the Link monsters, I run 1 Wee Witch's Apprentice, 1 Beat Cop from the Underworld, especially when you use the Dark monsters with Beat Cop, definitely does help. But if you can set up the arrows before you go for your fusions with Wee Witch, you can give them an extra power boost also. And I also run the 1 Nightmare Cerberus, the 1 Nightmare Phoenix, and the 1 Nightmare Unicorn to finish off the extra deck. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.